Let me be direct with you. I'm an attorney who spent 15 years handling traffic cases, and what I'm about to tell you could save you thousands of dollars. This isn't about manipulating anyone. This is about understanding the human psychology of law enforcement officers and how certain honest statements can completely change the outcome of your traffic stop. First, the disclaimer. I'm providing general legal information here, not specific legal advice for your situation. That said, what I'm sharing is based on years of sitting across from officers in court, hearing what makes them decide to show mercy, and understanding what actually resonates with them as human beings. Here's the legal reality. Officers have discretion. They can write you a ticket, give you a warning, or reduce the violation. That decision often comes down to those first 60 seconds of interaction. And certain phrases tap into something fundamental about why people become cops in the first place and what they deal with every single day. When the officer asks if you know why they pulled you over, most people either play dumb or get defensive. Both responses make officers close off emotionally. But here's what I tell my clients to say. Yes, officer, and I'm genuinely embarrassed about it. That word, embarrassed, is psychologically powerful. Officers hear excuses all day long. They hear anger, they hear lies, they hear elaborate stories. But genuine embarrassment? That's incredibly rare. One state trooper told me in 20 years he could count on one hand how many people expressed real embarrassment. He remembered every single one because he gave them all warnings. Why does this work? Because embarrassment shows self-awareness and conscience. It signals that you know you made a mistake and you actually care. That's the kind of person officers joined the force to protect, not punish. Here's another phrase that seems counterintuitive but creates powerful sympathy. Officer, my father was in law enforcement and he'd be ashamed of me right now. Or substitute mother, brother, uncle, whoever actually applies to you. Never lie about this, but if you have family in law enforcement, say it. This creates instant kinship. Police have a strong sense of brotherhood. When you mention a family connection to law enforcement, you're signaling that you were raised with those same values and you've let them down. You're part of the extended family. One officer told me he's never written a ticket to someone who genuinely had law enforcement family and expressed that shame. Not once. Now, if you're legally carrying a firearm, here's how you create massive sympathy while also protecting yourself legally. Officer, before anything else, I need to tell you I'm legally armed. My weapon is in the glove compartment with my permit. I'm telling you this for your safety. How would you like me to proceed? You've just eliminated their number one fear. Officer safety is paramount in every traffic stop. When you voluntarily disclose this before being asked, before reaching for anything, you've demonstrated that you value their life. I've had multiple officers tell me they've turned citations into warnings purely because of how someone handled this disclosure. Why? Because it shows respect, training, and genuine concern for their well-being. Here's a phrase that creates sympathy through raw honesty. I don't have a good excuse, and I'm not going to insult your intelligence by making one up. This is powerful because think about what officers hear constantly. The sun was in my eyes. Everyone else was speeding. I didn't see the sign. My speedometer's broken. They know it's almost always fabricated. When you acknowledge you don't have an excuse, you're treating them like the intelligent professionals they are. You're showing respect for their experience. One traffic sergeant told me this phrase makes him physically pause because suddenly he's not dealing with someone trying to con him. He's dealing with someone who made an honest mistake and owns it. That's someone he wants to help, not punish. But here's my legal warning. These phrases only work if they're absolutely genuine. Officers are trained to detect deception. They read micro-expressions, vocal stress, body language cues you don't even know you're giving. If they sense you're using some technique you learned online, it will backfire spectacularly and you'll get the maximum penalty. So only use these phrases if they reflect real feelings. Here's another one that creates deep sympathy. Officer, I was dealing with something stressful and I let it affect my driving. That's not an excuse, just an honest explanation. I know better. You're being vulnerable and human without using it as an excuse. You're acknowledging that emotions affected your judgment, which is actually mature and self-aware. This works because officers are human too. They've had bad days, they've made mistakes. When you show that kind of vulnerability combined with accountability, it resonates on a human level. But use this carefully and only for minor violations. Don't try this for reckless driving or suspected impairment. Let me tell you about a phrase that sounds weak but creates tremendous sympathy. I have a young daughter at home, and the last thing I want is to teach her that rules don't matter by making excuses right now. Or son, or kids, whatever is actually true for you. Again, never lie. Why does this work? Because many officers are parents. You're signaling that you understand the bigger picture about integrity and setting an example. You're not asking for mercy because you have kids. You're acknowledging that having kids makes this worse because you should know better. That's powerful. Here's the critical timing issue. All of this has to happen in the right sequence. The moment they walk up, your hands should be visible on the steering wheel. Window down completely. Dome light on if it's dark. Engine off. These actions show respect before you've said a single word. They create the emotional foundation for sympathy. When you speak, your tone matters more than the words themselves. You need to sound genuinely remorseful, not rehearsed, not overly friendly or chatty, just straightforward and honest, like you're talking to a professional you respect who caught you doing something wrong. Here's another sympathy builder. Officer, you're absolutely right to pull me over. What I did was unsafe, and I'm grateful you're out here keeping people safe. You've just validated their entire purpose. Most people treat cops like an inconvenience or an adversary. When you acknowledge they're doing important work and you're grateful for it, that creates connection. I had a client use this exact phrase, and the officer literally said, "I appreciate that," and gave him a warning. Why? Because officers face constant criticism, constant negativity, constant danger. When someone genuinely thanks them for the job they do, it stands out dramatically. Let me address something specific. If you've been pulled over for something technical, like expired registration or a broken taillight, say this: "Officer, I genuinely had no idea. Thank you for bringing this to my attention. I'll take care of it today." The phrase, "Thank you for bringing this to my attention," reframes them as helpful rather than punitive. You're expressing gratitude instead of resentment. Here's a phrase for when you genuinely disagree but don't want to escalate. "I respectfully have a different recollection, but I understand you're doing your job professionally. I won't argue with you here, officer." You've preserved your legal position without creating hostility. You've shown respect for their authority while maintaining your dignity. That kind of mature response creates sympathy because it shows character. Officers make dozens of stops each week. Most are forgettable, but interactions where the driver shows genuine remorse, respect, and humanity stick with them, and that's when they're most likely to show mercy. Courtroom testimonies reveal that warnings often come down to one thing: the person was apologetic, took responsibility, and seemed like a good person who made a mistake. After the stop, say, "I appreciate your professionalism, officer. Be safe out there." Even if you get a ticket, this leaves a positive impression that can help if you contest it later. These phrases don't guarantee a ticket-free outcome, but they increase your odds by showing respect for the officer and acknowledging the risks they take. Always be genuine. Mercy comes from authentic remorse, accountability, and respect. Your goal: show you're the kind of person officers want to protect, not punish.